Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan, along with my co-host, Nassau Community College student, Mike DeMarco.
Today, we're going to talk to a familiar name to most Long Islanders who decided to turn the page from a career in politics to find a place where there's no screaming, no lobbying, or finger pointing unless it's the tip of your finger against a line in a book you love.
It's my pleasure to welcome to the show former Congressman Steve Israel, who is now the proud owner of Theodore's Books in Oyster Bay. Steve, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC.
Well, it's great to be with you, not only as a new small business person and former member of Congress, but most importantly, as an alum of Nassau Community College.
Oh, even better. All right. Terrific. This is our day. Steve, let's start off. And this is quite a career change. And as I said to you before the show, I love bookstores, so I'm fascinated by it. But can you tell our audience a little bit about your background and maybe some cliff notes on your political career?
Sure. I mean, although asking a congressman or a former congressman to speak in a Cliff's Note version is a real challenge. I don't think it's ever been done before, but I'll do the best I can. I grew up on Long Island, lived in Levittown and Wantagh, went to Nassau Community College with the intention of one day serving in the United States Congress. I never would have been elected to Congress had I not gone to Nassau Community College. And we can talk about that later in the show if you would like. I worked as a congressional aide on Capitol Hill after graduating Nassau Community College. I was admitted to George Washington University. While there, got a job working as a congressional staffer. Returned to Long Island 17 years later, ran for Congress, and to my surprise, I think, and the surprise of many others, I won. I served in Congress for 16 years. But at the back of my mind was always this unquenchable thirst for bookstores. Anywhere I would go, anywhere in the world or in the country, my staff knew that my schedule had to include the location of a bookstore. And when I left Congress, unindicted and undefeated, which is a triumph these days.
It really is, yes.
I decided that my post-congressional life would be devoted to writing, which is another passion I have, and to opening up a bookstore, which I did just this past November. It's Theodore's Books in Oyster Bay.
As I said, I'm jealous of that because you get to do what I love every day, looking at a bookstore, going through it, and hitting the books. Mike?
So is this always this deep-seated idea to open up a bookstore throughout your career?
It was, Mike. I remember as a teenager growing up in Wantagh, I would kind of sketch out what my dream bookstore would look like. I mean, you talk about the nerdiest of things to do. Right? I'd be figuring out where I'd put fiction and nonfiction and political books, etc. So it was always in my bloodstream. But not a practical thing to do, particularly when I was in Congress, when I had to devote 180% of my energies to representing my district and to national issues. When I left, I knew that I had to do this one thing in my political retirement. And I'm very fortunate I was able to do it.
Steve, I'm just thinking, because I'm thinking the way you described yourself before, you're kind of the Tom Brady of bookstore owners, undefeated and unindicted. Really, that's some honor, you know? I mean, if you have this a Super Bowl of Congress.
I would say he makes slightly more money than I do.
Well, that money isn't everything. You have the books and you have the secrets.
That's
right. So we
right.
can't go with money these days. Why your store, Theodore's Books, is in Oyster Bay? Why did you pick that location?
Oyster Bay is known best, perhaps, for our hometown hero, Theodore Roosevelt. I am a student of Theodore Roosevelt. I kept a library in my congressional office of books on Roosevelt. And I find him to be a flawed and fascinating character in our national history. If you go to Oyster Bay, you know that is where he lived. That is where he worked. His summer White House executive offices are located across the street from our bookstore. The cemetery where he's buried, Young Cemetery, is down the block from our bookstore. And so I decided that what better name for a small, independent, community-rooted bookstore than Theodore's.
And that really is a perfect location. You could not have pinpointed, I guess, another one when you tell us where all the Theodore Roosevelt key places in history are located next to your store.
Yeah, and so many tourists come to Oyster Bay specifically to study Roosevelt, to go up to Sagamore Hill. But there's also an amazing Revolutionary War history. If anybody's ever seen the Netflix series Turn about Washington's spy network or read any of the books, particularly Alexander Rose's Washington Spies, there's a rich Revolutionary War history in Oyster Bay. I'm a history buff, and so I wanted to be in Oyster Bay where history converges and collides, and open up a store that emphasizes history and current affairs.
So now, how has COVID affected a bookstore like yours compared to all the Amazons of the world? I know you're just getting started, but do you feel like you had any setbacks getting the ball rolling?
Well, that's a great question. When I left Congress on January 3rd, 2017, I lived in Oyster Bay, and still do, and I went downtown to see what would make sense for a bookstore. And what I saw back in 2017 was no chance. The town didn't have enough foot traffic. A lot of the stores were boarded up. The town back then was really struggling. Strangely, if there's any silver lining to COVID, it's that small downtowns really rebounded as a result of COVID. People wanted to get out of quarantine. They wanted to get out of their homes, but they didn't want to go to a big Barnes and Noble necessarily. They didn't want to go to the mall. They wanted to be outside, do some window shopping. They got tired of ordering online. They wanted to support their local merchants, their local proprietors. So you had a return to downtowns, a very robust shop local movement, and then finally, a desire by so many to actually feel a book again, to feel it in their hands. I mean, people during quarantine, they were reading digitally or they were ordering online. They wanted to be able to go to a place where you could actually kind of, pick up the scent of the ink, feel the book in your hand, feel the pages as you run your fingertips across, and talk to people about books, actually speak to a bookseller and get recommendations. As a result of all that, by 2021, the summer of 21, a lot of those boarded up stores that I had seen 3 years earlier, they were rented. A new artisanal chocolatier opened up. Something called Teddy's Bully Bar and Grill opened up. A wine studio opened up. A beautiful new bakery opened up. So all of these stores began to reopen and thrive. And I went down there one day and took a look and said, all right, I've just got to make this happen. I've got to roll the dice. I found a place, small, 1,500 square feet, signed a lease, and opened up.
Steve, I have to tell you, listening to you and your enthusiasm, it just reminds me of when I pass Cinnabon. I can't pass Cinnabon. You smell that cinnamon, you're in the airport, and you, oh my gosh, that's so good. I've got to go. And even if it's one of the minis, I have to buy one. But it's always fun to see someone who really enjoys what they do. They love it. Now, I'm going to ask you a private question about you. Nobody's in the store. It's empty for a few minutes. Notice I say just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Which book do you pick up? Do you secretly grab a cookbook, or is it James Patterson, or is it a sports book?
Wow, that really is a good question.
Oh, I'm good at this stuff.
So I have kind of eclectic reading habits. I read 2 books at a time. And I try to keep some of my reading topical. And so I just finished an amazing and very distressing book about Ukraine by Anne Applebaum called Red Famine, Stalin's War on Ukraine. There was a famine in Ukraine that in many respects was perpetrated by Joseph Stalin in Russia. He tried to subjugate the peasant population of Ukraine by starving them to death. And I wanted to read that to understand what might help explain Russia's desires to take over Donetsk, Donbass, Crimea, and will those desires extend to a full-on invasion of Ukraine? I've been there many times. I served on the Armed Services Committee. I understand the policy rationale. But I use this book to help inculcate me into the historic perspectives, the dimensions between Ukraine and Russia. So I try and read something topical, and then I'm a novelist, and so I like to stay current in the genre. So yes, I will pick up a Patterson, but more likely, I will pick up something written by Nelson DeMille, even if I've read it already. Nelson is a neighbor of Nassau Community College. He lives in Garden City. He is one of the most prolific spy writers and thriller writers in the world. And he's been a bit of a mentor to me in my own writing. So when it's slow in the store, to stay current, I will pick up a Nelson DeMille book frequently and just kind of go through it again, even if I've read it already.
You are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Mike DeMarco, along with Bill Horan, and today we are speaking with former Congressman Steve Israel, who decided to turn the page from a career in politics to opening an independent bookstore named Theodore's Books in Oyster Bay. Now, I think it's great that you found a silver lining with everything going on with COVID. I know that a lot of businesses are having a hard time, and it's not easy. But, you know, it's all in the timing. But I want to know, were there any challenges going from being a congressman to running a bookstore? What were the differences there?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, definitely. Once I used to fly on Air Force One and sit in Oval Office meetings. Now I am literally, I'm not saying this trivially. Yesterday, I mopped the bathroom floor. I dusted the shelves. I reorganized the stock room. And by the way, I love it much more than sitting in the Oval Office and flying an Air Force One. That's cool stuff. That's heady stuff. But I don't know. I find this to be, in many respects, more fulfilling. I had to go from being, I've often said Congress is like the board of directors of the United States of America, right? 435 policymakers sitting on the floor of the House making policy, 100 senators. I had to go from that to operating a small business, learning how to make sure I met payroll. Hiring in this environment is a tough deal. Had to go through that. Had to go through my permitting procedure and make sure I had my sign permits and my electric permit and my occupants, my C of O. So I learned very quickly the lessons that every small business owner has to learn in opening up a new enterprise.
Steve, I love that you tell us the inside because, there's always that example of someone say, wait, that's below me, I won't do it. And the fact that you're willing to do everything from the most common elements of running a business to the higher up parts and the fun parts, probably talking to people, customers when they come in,
yes.
Talking about background, about books you love, and just exchanging information. As I'm listening to you, is being a college professor or a teacher or a lecturer in your future?
Well, I am actually a professor at Cornell, so my life is varied and busy. I run the Institute of Politics and Global Affairs at the Cornell Jeb Brooks School. I do that remotely. We operate out of Long Island, and I teach a course in politics, film, and popular culture. And I love doing that. The bookstore, it was. Look, I said to my wife, some people kind of retire and buy a boat. We're buying a bookstore. So this is meant to be a place to really kind of enjoy our retirement. It is not going to be, I will say, a particularly profitable enterprise. You don't open up an independent bookstore because you're going to get rich. You do it because it fulfills a passion in you, and that's how I see it. Mike, I just want to say this: the thing you touched on something that's really so vital. The thing that I love, actually, I think, Bill, you mentioned this. The thing that I love is when somebody comes into the store and instead of asking me for my position on should we invade Ukraine or climate or Biden or Trump, they'll say, Congressman, can you recommend a good book? And I get to spend as long as it takes making recommendations and gabbing about books. It's just sublime.
Well, you know what they say, if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. So I guess you're not working now. Yep. Now, yep. Steve, when you open up a store, because this is all new to us, although we love what you're talking about, Who decides what titles will be offered? Is this the publishers? Do you get to pick it? Do you bring in an expert who says have 10% of these books? And
also a terrific question. So there's several companies that actually help you open your doors with strategic inventory. And so we hired a company. They do all sorts of market analysis. They see what sells in other local bookstores in the region. They recommended they also have to know how much shelf space you have. And our store is 1,528 square feet. 40% is children's books, by the way, because children's books sell briskly.
Okay.
And so they kind of fill your initial shelf space. They sent me a list of 7,500 titles that they recommended. I then went through it with my team and revised it. We wanted to be a little heavier on history and current affairs, a little lighter on some other topics. And after about 2 months of going back and forth, we agreed on what was called our recommended opening store inventory. And then, Bill, it's a process of elimination. People will come in, and the thing I love about our store is people come in 9 times out of 10, we have the book they're looking for. If we don't, we know we need to order that book. And we also sell very briskly at our website, theodoresbooks.com. Now, on the website, you can get any book anywhere, practically. That was a bit of an overstatement. But if it's in circulation, if it's in print, you can go to our website, theodoresbooks.com, and order it. So the combination of the websites, the online sales, and the in-store sales is an evolution, really.
Fascinating how books are picked out. I never thought about that till we knew we were doing the show. Mm-hmm. And then who picks them out? And why not have 80% cookbooks? And why have children? Or should it be all sports? But obviously you have to serve all markets. And then you probably have your own little preference that you want to push it that way.
That's exactly right. And look, we made mistakes as every small business does. So initially we didn't, we opened in November, just in time for the holiday season, and then realized we hadn't ordered gift books, coffee table books. And so we had to scramble and we only knew that when people came in and asked whether we sold holiday coffee table books and gift books. So we scrambled, got the order in. And that's the beauty of the business, I think, is not just curating what you think people want, but catering to their own desires.
Here's the big question, and I know we've talked about a lot of other books written by other people, and we understand that you're a writer and novelist yourself. Yeah. Can you tell us about your books?
When I was in Congress, I wrote 2 political satires. What better place to write a satire on Congress than from Congress? The first was called The Global War on Morris, and it was, I'm happy to say, very well received, really a critical success beyond what I thought. It's a satire of the global war on terror and the overreaction at times that occurred within the Bush administration and in Congress, and it takes place on Long Island. The second book is called Big Guns, and it's a political satire of what is, in my view, the exaggerated strength of the gun lobby in controlling members of Congress. The gun lobby punches way above its weight and has what I think is excessive control of members of Congress. Had I written a dry policy book about it, maybe my mother would have bought it. So I decided to explain it using the art of satire, and that's Big Guns.
Steve, it's so refreshing because you're so truthful in any answer, and we can see as we're talking to you that this is something you really enjoy and just how much you enjoy it. And that's always the greatest pleasure, to deal with someone who really loves what they're doing, no matter what that is. Now, I understand that you're interested in partnering with some local merchants and nonprofits to feature authors in book signings. Can you tell us more about this? Have you done any yet?
The thing that we really focus on is creating platforms for local authors, for local organizations. We have community partnership nights where we donate proceeds back to a local charity, or a share of proceeds. Let me be clear on that. A share of the proceeds. We have book and author events all the time. And we've brought in national figures, everyone from Congressman Adam Schiff We did an event with former Speaker Newt Gingrich, so we're relentlessly bipartisan. We have a full lineup of local authors, but also national celebrity authors coming in. And so we love to just serve as a platform where you can get to meet an author, ask questions. And if you are a local author with a book and you think that, you can gather, an audience with us, we invite you to talk about your book.
And what a great, we've had so many wonderful people on Long Island who've written books. What a great outlet, someone like yourself who enjoys what they're doing, to expose them to the neighborhood, to the people there, and to meet future readers of their books, and for them to meet the author. I think that's a great honor.
You are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Mike DeMarco, along with Bill Horan, and today we are speaking with former Congressman Steve Israel, who decided to turn the page from a career in politics to opening an independent bookstore named Theodore's Books in Oyster Bay. Now, I'm sure that, as you've mentioned, you're in the bookstore, you got some downtime, you pick up a few books, and that you've loved bookstores for a long time, and you've had a whole life of experience. So what are some books that you recommend that everyone needs to read?
Well, that's another great question. So it depends on one's passions. I don't believe that it's up to me to assign books to people that they may find irrelevant. They're just going to hate the book and turn off to the issue. So my approach is, when somebody comes into the store, is to say, what's a book that you read and enjoyed? And then I'll work off of that. So for example, if you want to understand politics on Long Island, right? So if you're just curious about that and you want to understand Long Island's geography, and why the bridge is so low on the Northern State Parkway, for example, and why is there Jones Beach? How did that all happen? It's Robert Caro's The Power Broker, which is the seminal biography of Robert Moses. So if you want to understand that, it is required reading. If you want to understand what is happening in Washington, D.C., we have a full current events section. In my view, there's a book that was written by a guy named Robert Draper called Don't Ask What Good We Do Here, about the Congress of 2010, the Tea Party Congress, that explains a lot of what's happening now. If you want to understand, if you're driven by romance, we have a team of booksellers. So I hired a bunch of folks from the old book review that operated in Huntington and closed. So if you're interested in romance, we have a romance bookseller. If you're interested in young adult, we have a young adult bookseller. It's like a museum. We have docents. They are at your disposal. You come in, tell us what interests you. They're going to give you the best recommendations around.
Steve, when you changed careers so drastically, was that difficult, or did you say, oh, thank God? Because you're going from one where you could get a phone call and it could be the end of the world to someone wants a mystery book. So it's a big difference. And or was it like, thank God, now I can wind it down? Or was it hard getting used to that sometime when your life is so fast paced?
Well, I haven't wound down. That's the problem. My wife keeps reminding me I've just picked up other responsibilities that don't involve fundraising and getting on planes twice a week to go to Washington and back. So my schedule is as frantic as ever, but far more fulfilling. People often ask whether I miss Capitol Hill. Look, there's nothing about the current Congress that I miss. Nothing about the current state of politics that I miss. Nothing. But I do miss the people. And I talk to them every day. I talk to my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, every day. And so I'm able to stay in touch with them. But I'm very deeply concerned about where democracy is going. One of the things we did at the store, because of my concern for democracy, is we put up a banned book section. So where you have governments and school boards that are banning books across the country, we now sell them in our bookstore as my small contribution to preserving democratic norms in this country.
Can you tell us also, if someone is thinking of a career change, you having just gone through it, is there some piece of advice you would give them or a tip that you want us to know about?
Find mentors. I was very fortunate because I happened to know the former head of the American Booksellers Association. And so I had lunch with him and then dinner and many conversations where I said to him, is this the right career change for me? And initially he said no. You're going to lose money. Don't do it. And within several weeks, he came back to me and said, not only do I think you should do it, but I want to invest in your store. So find people that you can trust. Read voraciously. I read everything I could read about how to open up a bookstore. I attended online classes. So read voraciously and find a mentor who has done what you want to do to help you with the gut checks that are necessary to preserve your sanity.
And should we throw in also go to Nassau Community College to get a good basis?
Absolutely.
There you go. Okay, we got that commercial in and nobody noticed.
Now, Steve, I know you don't really miss your time too much in politics and you're enjoying the bookstore life, but do you have any crazy stories that you could maybe briefly share with us that maybe weren't right to share when you were in office, so to speak?
Look, most of them are classified, so
so they still,
but I will tell you,
share them.
There are so many stories. I will tell you one of the reasons that and I hope I don't, I may annoy some people, but one of the reasons that I have a very close relationship with Joe Biden is I was in the Oval Office once with the president and the vice president. My dad had just received a diagnosis of lung cancer, and they told us he didn't have long. I learned that on my way to the Oval Office. And I shared that with the president, and the president wrote him a beautiful note. And then Joe Biden took me into his office and he spent a half an hour with me. And he called my mom. And he kept calling my mom to check in on her. And so that is why I was so supportive of President Biden during his campaign. I remain supportive of him. I'm in touch with the White House frequently. When people say, tell me your favorite story, I'd have to say that's it, because it impacted me so personally. It helped my mom. The president of the United States, helped my mom through the toughest time in her life. And I don't think that anybody, Republicans and Democrats do that kind of stuff, I will say. They don't get enough credit for it.
Steve, before we wrap up, would you give us the exact address of your store in Oyster Bay?
Yes, Theodore's Books, 17 Audrey Avenue, Oyster Bay, right downtown, or you can visit us at theodoresbooks.com.
That's what we want to hear. I think as our listeners probably observed, not only is Steve a Nassau Community graduate, a very proud one, and that's always great for a show at Nassau Community College, but also he loves what he does, and I think that's the best lesson we can learn from anybody, and also we can have a lot of fun going to the store and picking out some books and learning from his background and knowledge. We want to thank former Congressman Steve Israel, the proud owner of Theodore's Books in Oyster Bay. Steve, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Ask for me when you come in. I'd be happy to help you.
I'm Bill Horan. I'm here with Mike DeMarco. We thank you for listening to this week's special edition of My Hometown.
We'd like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.